Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. It's time for another voicemail. Today's voicemail is from a caller named Chad. Let's listen to what Chad has to say.
Hello, Lloyd. My name is Chad. I'm from the United States. So just a brief synopsis of what I've been through. Just slowly been waking up for the last few years, and really since January of 2021, me and my wife had a conversation, and we decided we're done. We haven't officially dissociated yet, but we're just leaving. But for the last couple months before that, I finally, gave myself permission to look at, other sites besides jw.org for information. And I found that so helpful. And, between, I think the first video I watched was the Leah Remini special on Scientology, but the Jehovah's Witness episode with yourself and several other people in there. And, between your channel, a few of the other YouTube channels I've watched, a shunned podcast, and there's been a couple other things I've listened to, it's brought so much information, so many different viewpoints to me that, growing up in the organization, you don't really think of. And I really want to get involved in this activism. But, I don't necessarily have the resources to start, my own podcast or my own YouTube channel. But I'm just really interested in getting involved. I was wondering what you would recommend, or, if there's, some way to get involved with some of these activism channels. I would be interested in your thoughts and any recommendations you would have. And full permission to use this on your YouTube channel. And I'd just like to thank you again for all the work that you've done.
Well, thank you very much, Chad. That was a lovely message. Congratulations to you and your wife for waking up and coming to this realization, we're done. I can imagine that will have been quite a dramatic moment for both of you. And actually, it's quite rare. Well, I don't know how rare it is, but certainly there are cases where a spouse wakes up and their partner doesn't join them. So I think it's something to be treasured when you can share that journey together as husband and wife. In so many cases, it's really not that simple, and it's actually quite a painful thing. And frankly, the marriage just can't survive. So it's wonderful that both of you have made it out. Well done. As to your question of how can I get involved, what can I do in terms of activism, I don't quite know what you mean when you say I don't have the resources to do a YouTube channel or start a podcast, because obviously anyone can upload a video to YouTube and you don't get charged for doing it, or at least I hope you don't get charged, or else I'd owe a lot of money by now. But I think probably what you mean is that when you say resources, maybe you don't feel as though it's in you to do that particular form of activism, which is fair enough. It really isn't for everyone. Not everyone is disposed to jumping on camera or doing a podcast, although those are excellent mediums for activism that allow you to reach a broad audience and allow people to hear something that they otherwise wouldn't hear. TikTok is another way of doing that form of activism that's recently sprung up and seems to be all the rage at the moment. I guess social media in general, I mean, you don't have to be uploading videos or podcasts in order to be taking advantage of social media, because when you think about it, social media has just reinvented entirely what it means to do activism. and made activism accessible on a whole new level that wasn't available to former Jehovah's Witnesses in previous decades. I mean, think about the Ray Franz era, how frustrating it would have been doing activism in those days. There was no Twitter, no Facebook, no Reddit, no YouTube. It was just, I don't know, writing letters, ringing people, arranging physical meetups. I mean, physical meetups are great, by the way, but you're never going to be able to have them at the frequency that's needed, I feel, to really unpack, to really process what's happened to you and get that feeling of kinship with others. So I feel as though social media has been a game changer. There are plenty of faded XJWs on Twitter who are continually making information available, retweeting news articles without using their real names, perhaps because of fear of shunning or for whatever reason, they're not yet ready to show themselves on camera or show their identities, but they are still making a huge noise on social media. And incidentally, just going back to YouTube for a moment, my first few YouTube videos were done anonymously. So I literally got someone else to read a script for me that I'd written, and I did basically montage videos, or I did videos where I showed recordings of, for example, Toni Morris with a little bit of commentary in text on the screen. And I know that there are others. I'm thinking of John Maple, for example. There are others who are able to make videos without revealing their identity. So I don't think the issue of fading and preserving one's identity should prevent anyone. I'm not talking necessarily to you, Chad, but I don't think that should prevent people from making YouTube videos if that's what they want to do. I think there are all sorts of clever ways of presenting the information without revealing your identity. But the beauty of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram is that even if you're not the one making the content, you can still make a noise about it. You can still make sure this information gets circulated. Because, for example, if I'm circulating one of my videos, it's not going to have quite the same impact if I'm plugging my own video as it would say if you watched it, for example, or if someone else watched it and enjoyed it and wrote maybe a sentence or a paragraph or two talking about why it's important and why it's relevant and why people need to watch it. People are always going to give, I think, more credence and more weight and importance to a recommendation from someone other than the content creator. So in a way, you have a power that I don't have, at least in terms of my videos. And yeah, that's something that anyone can do. Just plug the hell out of the resources that others have made. And it doesn't have to just be YouTube videos, of course. It could be news articles, documentaries, you name it, breaking news about Jehovah's Witnesses. Social media is at our disposal to make a huge noise. And I love seeing what so many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are doing in that regard. Again, many of whom are doing it without showing who they are, and they're still making a huge noise. Another thing I've written down here, it's actually something I alluded to in an older video. I made a video a few years back, not long after I'd written my book, The Reluctant Apostate, to commend those who were going into libraries and checking to see if The Reluctant Apostate was available in the library. And if it wasn't available, making sure the library ordered it into stock. Whether you're a Jehovah's Witness, a faded Jehovah's Witness or ex-Jehovah's Witness, or physically out, mentally out ex-Jehovah's Witness, anyone can do that. You can make sure, and I'm not saying this purely for my book, there's obviously Crisis of Conscience, there's Jim Penton's Apocalypse Delayed, There's Leaving the Witness by Amber Scorer. Any number of ex-Jehovah's Witness books. And of course, once they're in the library, local Jehovah's Witnesses can surreptitiously get access to them without buying them. So they can sneakily either take them out or maybe read them while no one's looking, maybe with another book cover over the book, however they do it. But I just think that is a really clever way of activism. I think more people could do it. And I love to hear of people doing it with my book. And I would imagine I speak for any ex-Jehovah's Witness author who's written on this subject. You want your stuff to be read. And what better way to make sure it gets read than for it to be available in as many libraries as possible? So that's one really, really easy form of activism that anyone can do. And I would really recommend that anyone watching this, if you have a local library, check to see what books, what ex-Jehovah's Witness books are available. And depending on what's available or what isn't available, order the stock in or get the stock ordered in so that local witnesses can benefit. I've also written down, speak to your local elected representative, your local politician, about the abuses of Jehovah's Witnesses. We need as many people as possible to be making a fuss about the abuses of this organization, because otherwise no one's going to do anything. You know, if more and more politicians are hearing from the people that they represent, from their constituents, even if there isn't anything going on right now that they can throw their weight behind, at least it's registered mentally. At least they've had these conversations so that at some future point, if, for example, there's a vote on should we do an investigation into child abuse among Jehovah's Witnesses, they'll remember, oh, yes, I've been contacted by several people, several of my constituents. This is something I should vote for. So putting pressure on representatives, on politicians locally, trying to reach out to journalists. This is something I frankly don't have time to do. I do sometimes get contacted by journalists and by producers and documentary filmmakers asking for information on Jehovah's Witnesses, and I obviously do my best to give whatever information I can whenever those opportunities come up. But because I'm so busy with my channel churning out all the content, it's not like I have much time in my schedule to literally just go round and basically canvass journalists who I know and respect and say, you need to be talking about this child abuse story, or you need to be talking about this shunning story, or whatever. And I think that is a really important form of activism. I had Jan Frode Nielsen on my channel for an interview, thumbnail here if Tibor is gracious. And that was something he was wonderful at, is wonderful at, just keeping that pressure up on journalists and making sure they have the information in front of them. Because make no mistake, this is an important story. You know, whichever angle you want to go at, whether it's the blood issue, whether it's shunning, whether it's child abuse, all of the information is there. It's incredibly damning. It literally just needs a journalist who cares to come along and put everything together and make it as up-to-date and relevant as possible. I can't see why investigative journalists aren't writing about this more. And obviously there is an improvement. Certainly in the years that I've been an activist, I've seen more exposure on these issues, but I think we can do better. So that's another simple form of activism, trying to get the attention of journalists. And finally, I have to mention, because I do think that this is a valid form of activism, and I'm not doing this as a plug, by the way, but it is a valid form of activism, supporting ex-Jehovah's Witness content creators on Patreon. And again, I'm not doing this as a plug. I'm purely mentioning it because I'm answering the question. It's a valid form of activism. I feel I'd be doing the hundreds of patrons who make this channel possible a disservice if I dismissed it as a form of activism, because I know it is activism. I know that the money that gets pledged, and it can be as little as $1 for my channel, whatever money gets pledged, people have had to earn, you know? It's not just growing on trees. People are giving up something so that my channel, or whatever other content creator we're talking about, so that these resources can be available, so that this content can continue to be made. And I think Patreon is especially important, given that YouTube, although there have been improvements, I must say, in recent years in terms of demonetization, YouTube is fickle. YouTube's interests do not lie in the exposing of abuse, in the exposing of cults. They want to make as many people happy as possible, and material such as the stuff I put out on my channel isn't entirely conducive to what YouTube has in mind when it comes to the material they want to be putting out and they want to be promoting. So that's where Patreon comes in. And what I'm going to do now is put a caption on screen with, again, the magic of Tibor. You'll see on screen now a list of Patreon creators that I think are worth looking at if you are interested in this particular form of activism, namely pledging support. I'm not including my channel in this list, by the way. You can get the links for my Patreon below, but it's a valid form of activism. And again, it won't be for everybody. Money doesn't grow on trees, especially when you come from an ex-Jehovah's Witness background. I think sometimes that can make it especially difficult to earn money. But if you have it available and you like what other people are doing, and it's something that perhaps they can do and you can't do, I do think it's a wonderfully kind and considerate way of just paying it forward, of just making sure this material can get made. So those are all the main ways that I can think of doing activism. And I guess it's a case of throwing it open to the comments. Are there any methods of activism that I've missed out? I've deliberately, by the way, missed out methods of activism that infringe on human rights. So I would never recommend, Kingdom Hall crashing and confronting and intimidating or threatening Jehovah's Witnesses in the street or when they're doing their worship. But I've tried to include as many peaceful forms of activism as I can. If there are any that I've missed out, I'm sure my amazing viewers will fill in the blanks in the comments below. But that's all we have time for. Remember that if you would like to leave a voicemail, the thing to do is go to speakpipe.com/Cedars, remembering to indicate clearly if you don't want your message to be played on my channel. But that's all I have time for. I hope you've enjoyed this video. And as always, thank you for watching.